If you have ever been curious about Dungeons & Dragons, or the people who play it, you've come to the right place. Welcome to Ready Set Roll Insight, where you will learn how to be a better player and what drew people to the game in the first place. Now, join us for Insight with your host, Daniel Wells.
So yes, welcome everybody to Ready, Set, Roll Insight. I am your host, Daniel Wells, and with me today is co-host
Craig. And we also have another person here. Let me look at my notes. Straight out of the Texas State Correctional Facility for manslaughter, Jason Massey.
No, Craig, the other one.
Oh, sorry.
A selling author, soon-to-be comic book creator, and a maker of their own RPG system, Jason Massey.
Hi, everybody. I will never have better SEO than that guy. I don't care how many years I'm on the internet. That guy's dead, and I still can't beat him, and it's really disheartening.
Google does not like you.
You got to kill somebody. That's the lesson I'm.
You just got to kill somebody, I guess, and
That's just got
your name right up. Wait, this guy murdered somebody and hosts a D&D podcast?
Right. With all the other stuff, I feel like, that'll probably put me over the edge.
But yeah, it's great to have you back, Jason, on the show.
I appreciate you guys having me. Thank you.
For all of you who didn't listen to the previous episodes of Insight where we had Jason on, a little bit of your background again. Just a quick...
I have been hosting a show called Dungeons and Randomness now for almost 9 years. In April, it'll be 9 years. And in that time, I think I've hosted more than 300 or 400 games or so. Easy? Yeah, because there's that many episodes. Yeah, so yeah. I started DMing in episode 1, and I've been lucky enough to amass not only my best friends but amazing talents, and I get to play with them all the time, and I'm super lucky and don't deserve it.
You deserve everything that you get.
No,
I mean, you bring joy to a lot of people, so I think you deserve it.
Dude, especially this last year, if we could distract a few people from what the hell's going on.
Exactly. The dumpster fire that was last year, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, top to bottom, worst year.
Well, I think that we have some good questions that we would like to ask you. We're going to hit a multitude of topics because you, my friend, have been spinning a lot of plates.
I stay busy. I try. we just had a business meeting. We're about to double our work schedule. We're adding more groups. We're doing new stuff. We're getting ready to write a second book. We're doing it. I'll never see my wife again, but we're gonna do it.
There's no. So, at least you're doing something.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Keep it keeping your hands not idle. But speaking of books, you released your adventure module.
Yep. It was the first book of at least 6, because we're doing one book for each continent. That one was extra tricky because we had to try and cram in as much stuff as we could about not just the history of the continent and beasts that are on there, shops, cities, all that stuff, but we also had to cover everything that had happened in the show that the cast had done. So it was like writing 2 books at once. So what should have been around 200 pages turned out to be almost 4. It is a big boy. It sits on the shelf back there, and my bookshelf leans to the right because of it. So I'll wheel back and grab it.
Yeah. Just this whole bookshelf falls down.
See, everything fell down because that was a load-bearing book. This would be The Adventurer's Guide to Theria, Volume 1. Almost 400 pages of goodness, and we're really happy with how people received it. They really seem to like it. Obviously, the main thing was making sure Kickstarter backers were informed. Like, we did team meetings that we posted. We kept, we tried to keep people abreast of what's going on, because I don't know if you guys back Kickstarters. Like,
well, I know they can be shady. A lot of stories of people being like, okay, we're millions of dollars in, but we're bankrupt.
Yeah, and that's the thing is that's not the majority of Kickstarter. Majority of Kickstarter is either people not meeting their goal and either coming back, reassessing and trying it again and learning something, or people who do hit their goal that's pretty modest. They put out the thing and they go back and do something new. The problem is, I think most people hear stories about Kickstarter and they hear that it's just, full of thieves. And, I think it's really important to communicate with backers, let them know what you're working on, because especially if it's a process like writing a book, it's going to take a while. And to you, you're waking up every day and you're plugging in and you're writing, or you're getting artwork done. We worked with over 45 artists when we were at our peak. That takes time. So to you, you're doing everything right. But if you don't speak to your backers, months go by and they think, oh, they just took the money and ran. Like they're people who aren't going to be as patient as you'd like them to be. So yeah.
So I think this is a good. You hit on things that happened in the story of the podcast and how you put them in your book. And I was talking to Dan before the show about how important it is or I feel, for characters to have backstory, and how you can intertwine that into, as a DM, like you can use people's backstory in the show, and it makes people more invested in it. What are your feelings on that?
I think it's absolutely necessary. It's not just something that's good to have. It should be almost mandatory, right? You should have some idea of where your characters come from. You should have some idea of where your character wants to go. Like, what are their goals and aspirations? Because otherwise you just got a set of numbers, right? Well, I'm a fighter. I'm level 3.
And then you
I don't really have any goals in life. I mean, that sounds like a regular 20-year-old to me.
Yes, that's fine. But I ask every single player that's on the show, it's like, hey, I need a backstory, because the world's it goes both ways, right? Like I want to write stuff. Obviously, I want to be creative. I want to, fill the world with all kinds of stuff, but that means nothing to me if the players don't interact with it. I think they'll have a lot more of a reason to engage or interact with something if their character has experiences or, goals in life. If their family was slaughtered by, some rare creature, they're probably going to have a grudge against that rare creature or something like that. And if they hear tell of it out in the wild, the rest of the party may have no interest. But that could be a whole little arc we tell just because of something they wrote down, 2-3 years ago in a piece of paper.
Then the party just absolutely murders it.
Probably. I mean, hopefully. That's the way you hope it goes, right? Because otherwise, you're going to be really mad at that one player who pulled you in the direction of something you had no business tackling.
So, on the topic of backstories and stuff, how do you keep that one player from having the complete and utter edgelord backstory?
I feel like I've been really lucky. I've only had to deal with that a couple of times in my life. I've said this before. I've only had one bad game of D&D. One bad game. When we did our first Kickstarter, this was back in 2014. I was doing... I had a set of games that I was fulfilling. So I ran it for completely random people. So there'd be the backer, and then here's my 4 friends, and we really want to play. So this guy came to me before the session, and he kind of said, he's like, look, my one friend's a little like, he's a lot. So just kind of, he's never played D&D before. He's, so he spent the entire time trying to poison the rest of the party. And it's like, oh my God, someone paid for this, right? So I think it depends on what kind of sense of humor they have. Because in that case, I just kind of playfully, you can kind of like take a couple of jabs at them and just remind them that it's like, hey, this is a team game. You guys are on the same team. Or it might involve you just, in that case, it might involve me pulling the backer aside. It's like, are you sure you want this guy in? Because like, you're not having fun. I could tell you're not. this guy's the only one who's having fun because he's just crapping on everything you're doing. So, um, I always tell people, no matter how badass you make a character, right? They have off time. If you make a big bad, if you make somewhat, this Viking warlord, twin battle axes, beheading all this, eventually he's gonna have to eat a muffin or something. Like he's gonna have an off day, drink a cup of coffee, go to the bathroom, like that. You have to imagine these people as people, and if the second you imagine that big bad, like having a chat with a friend or something, and it ruins the character, you've gone too far. You got to go back. It's like, okay, let's rework it. You're just evil. Like you're just pure evil.
Yeah, reel it in, buddy.
Yeah, a little bit.
Grognak, is that the last donut with sprinkles? Yeah.
Pure evil. Pure evil.
Pure evil sprinkles. He calls them
They were
Jimmy's.
for the party. You ate every last one.
So, going on to another fun topic of yours, with all your busy schedule and also story stuff, the comic book that I've heard so much about from Craig. You're all making a comic book about the stories you've had, or is it something completely separate?
Well, it's in our show. Not to spoil anything, but this was years ago. One of the big storylines was our first group to start with the show ends up traveling 17 years in the future. And while they were away, this big oppressive regime took over, and their campaign ended up being, oh, we have to fix this thing we kind of messed up. We set a bunch of stuff in motion and just went away for 2 decades. So now we got to, like, oopsie, let's help fix it. So the comic is actually what happens in between that time while they're gone. Like, how did things get so bad? Why are things the way they are? And who was trying to fix things before this group ever came back? A lot of things were set in motion and fixed before they got back from their little trip. So people they were friends with, people who they had close associations with, were really angry that they set all this emotion. It's like, and then you ditched. Like, I don't care, what happened or whose fault it is. It's, it's a big deal. So, we would definitely like to do more than one, but it's going to be a self-contained story. It's 80 pages. The first 6 pages are completely done, colored. We have some wonderful artists we're working with, and we're more than halfway to our goal with, God, like 2.5 weeks to go, something like that.
And how many weeks
Hopefully we can get you there.
Yeah, how many weeks has the campaign been up?
I think it's been about 2 weeks now. So we got about 2 weeks to go. Yeah.
Wow.
It's not doing too bad. It's anybody who's ever run a Kickstarter, you have that one really good day in the beginning, and then nothing happens for a while, and then a really good day at the end. So you got to be patient. It's nerve-wracking.
So, I know you got a lot of cool stuff going on with Patreon and everything that you do over there. And we have been doing, on every 4th week of the month, we do a Barovia session.
Oh, okay.
I've been fortunate enough to, like, kind of suck these guys into the world of Barovia. How important is it for you to immerse your players into these things, and then talk about what the cool thing that the little spin you've put on your Curse of Strahd campaign, because I think Dan would really like it.
I tried running Curse of Strahd the first time, and I was just going to run it straight, right? Made a party. They got to Death House, which is the first thing you run into. Everyone died 3 sessions in because it's Curse of Strahd. And we walked away, and I prepped that whole book, and I was ready to go. And I'm like, wait, we're on like page 12. Like there's so much more to do. So I got a little frustrated, and I said if we were to do it again, I wanted to do it with a slight twist. We called it Curse of Strahd Reincarnated. So every time a player dies, An hour later, they get reincarnated as someone completely random. We roll random race, stat, health, everything. So the cool thing is when a player character dies, that player leaves the group and they tag someone else on the cast. We have like a 19-person cast. So they tag someone else and they play a game of telephone, basically. They have 1 minute to tell their entire backstory to that next player, and so on and so on. So the goal is when you get to your 4th or 5th life, you have 1 minute to recant 4 or 5 characters worth of knowledge. So it becomes this muddled mess in the next player's head. It's like, I have no idea what you're talking about. So it comes off as, oh, I kind of remember some of that, but yeah, I mean, that's the goal anyway. We had an interesting turn of events where the players sided with Strahd. Totally sided with him. And now we're dealing with that because I didn't see that coming and I didn't know. I had no idea. Basically, he made a pitch to them and they were like, yeah, I like this guy. I like Handsome Vampire Man. Like, this was, yeah, why aren't we siding with him?
Good deal.
Yeah. He's nobility.
The cool thing about your twist on it that I really like, because I'm the one running the show on that one, is if you've read the book, it says in there, souls get trapped in this plane of existence, and some people are born without a soul, and others are born with one. So, like, the souls do not escape. So the reincarnation thing is a real thing that happens in this land. So I thought that was a really neat spin on it.
I really do. I like Barovia as a setting. I found the campaign a little too punishing. Like, if you want to run like a real meat grinder of, of a game, it's really fun. If players kind of walk in thinking it's like Dark Souls, right? It's like, look, I'm gonna die. It's just a matter of time. Then I feel like I tell everybody, don't fall in love. Don't even like your character. Like you're it's fine because they're gonna fall eventually.
Yeah, the one thing that my group of players, which Dan's not part of, is they're really good about assessing the situation and is this fight or flight? And the majority of the time it's we'll stick around for a little bit, and if it's not going our way, we're getting the hell out of Dodge.
Exactly.
They've gotten pretty far, and they're doing things that I wish they didn't get done because it's more cool if they don't do it that way. But
Barovia really lends itself to like a monologue storytelling. You just sitting there, just recanting. It's like, oh, okay, here's the walls and here's that smell and it really does conjure images of the old Universal monster movies and stuff like that. This bleak, I really love that about the campaign. I find it to be super easy to paint a picture. The only problem is all of Barovia is kind of like that. So you can only do that so many times where it's like, yes, we get it. It's icky. Like
there's fog everywhere.
Yeah. Like,
what are you going to throw at me next? A vampire?
Oh, you summoned the 6th skeletal animal. Oh.
Right.
I mean, it definitely also depends on player action and inaction. Because if the players don't do something, there is a reaction, and it's a hard-hitting reaction. But if the players are a little more forward-thinking and put shovel to dirt, they can get a lot of stuff done. Like our paladin friend nat 20'd somebody with a shovel and got a whole bunch of information that led us to solving a big problem, of course, making us fight 6 vampires at the same time. So at level 3.
One step forward.
Now, or you fight them later, or So, I guess we can move into our next topic of discussions. Like I said, you have so many like irons in the fire. It's like we're rapid succession.
I'm a scatterbrained man. We do make a living at this, but it's hard. Like, you got to hustle. So we're always working on the next thing. What's the next thing we're gonna do? So there's a bunch.
I have a friend of mine that I play Pathfinder with on Mondays regularly, who is busy creating his own RPG system. And every time I ever talk to him about it, he says it's so much work. He's finally almost to that point where he's able to put it into Kickstarter mode. But it just, every single time, it sounds like it's such a workload. And you're about to make one yourself. What can you tell me about your experiences with the creation process?
It is, I would call it a full-time job. And it depends on, I guess it depends on your timetable, right? We definitely wanted to have a lot of people. We wanted to have kind of a lot of cooks to get more perspectives on, what's your favorite RPG? What do you like about that system? What do you don't like? And we've had several team meetings now. And we realized this is not a project that is going to get done quickly. It's going to be something we have to pick at for a while, because just the sheer amount of math and probabilities, and then making that fun. That's before you even get to balancing. Like, make it just conceptually. Does this idea hold water? Would this even work? Then you have to look at it and go, yeah, but is that any fun? And does it fit these other things that you're working on? And I would say it's at least 2 or 3 years of work before you have anything that you'd want to show anybody. Definitely.
Well, in your RPG, one thing that we on Ready Set Roll really value, and let's just say D&D in general, is I like to give my players the ability for creativity and thinking outside of the box.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes, like in 5e, it doesn't really. It's almost better to hit something with a sword and think outside of the box, because they don't really reward that type of play.
Yeah, and there's something to be said definitely for everything on the sheet functioning the way it's supposed to, right? Like, that relatively, besides Rangers, but relatively, most things are balanced. So you can look at it, it's like, yeah, I know these things pretty much work, but I think it's kind of a failing in D&D that the entire pitch, like, let's say you rope some people in who have never played an RPG like that before, and you tell them, it's like, yeah, it's a world. You could go anywhere, do anything you want. You can only use the attacks on your page. Like, it's like, well, what if I want to swing from this chandelier and do this? And it's like, well, there are no rules for that. So, like, a lot of the improvised weapons, improvised damage, it's like a D4 or something like that. It's not usually worth it. I threw that out immediately. Like, okay, if you're in a bar and you pick up a chair and hit someone over the head with it, it's a D4.
It's like hitting somebody with a fist, Jason.
It's a chair.
With a fist.
No.
Have you ever watched wrestling? No, that is false.
Then you take off your sting mask and your sting underneath of it.
Again, that's outside the box thinking. Not only would you get inspiration for that, that's not a D4 of damage. That person is probably dead.
Because you hit him with the stinger. I know.
Yeah. Yes.
Like stabbing somebody with a beer bottle. I mean, that's going to be a little bit more than a D4, you feel like. Well, I mean, it does as much as a dagger, I guess, but at the same time, it's like,
there's okay. Let's say you break a beer bottle off. This is how intricate my brain works, and I probably make it too complex. But it's like, okay, you're gonna break this beer bottle off. Give me like a D6 to see how it breaks, because there's that super clean break where you've just made a hole in somebody, basically. And you imagine there's going to be lots of blood with that. Or what if it's like a little jagged piece and you stick it in somebody and it breaks off or something? Like, that could get infected. Like, there's so many cool things you could do with that. And in the book, it's like a D4. Like, if you pick up a waiter or waitress and throw it at somebody, it's a D4. Technically, that's an improvised weapon.
I just imagine the halfling like breaking it without a gloved hand, and the glass just shatters in their hand. Oh gosh!
So, to Daniel's credit, one time we were playing a game of his, and we had a ship battle, and that's one thing I feel that D&D has really dropped the ball on is ship combat.
Yeah.
And he had this whole scenario set up of where we're like in a whirlpool and the ships are getting closer and it keeps coming to my turn and I'm like I'm just sitting there on the ship just waiting, and he gets close enough that I drop a flaming sphere on the deck of the ship. I've been asking questions this whole time. Are they shooting above deck cannons? Yeah, they're shooting above deck cannons. Where's the gunpowder? It's above deck with the cannons. So I just drop a bomb on basically on the ship and I just hit one side and hit the other, and he's like, well, instead of doing the amount of damage a flaming sphere does, it hit the gunpowder, so I guess the ship exploded. So
Right.
there goes his whole ship combat. But normally, what he could have done is just said it does a flaming sphere damage, but instead, to his credit, he added in, well, there is gunpowder and everything up there. And if you're dealing with a DM that's by the book, I don't know necessarily that they would do that.
You could see what they were going for, right? There's different parts of the ship. Different parts of the ship have different AC, different hit points, different, I could see what they were going for because, you're trying to paint the picture that the ship is this massive thing that isn't one entity. It's made up of parts. And you want everybody to have some kind of agency and be able to do stuff. But it ends up being pretty boring when you're playing it out of the book. It's a lot of waiting around, and I think everyone pictures like Pirates of the Caribbean, right? Like you're picturing people swinging back and forth on ropes and firing cannons and like boarding each other's vessels and all that, and it just doesn't quite play out that way.
Well, I mean, in a session I played, I hit a rudder of the ship, right? Its steering mechanism with a shatter spell because I'm trying to break the rudder, and the DM's like, "Oh, the ship's got too much health. It didn't really do much." And I'm like, "Oh." It was like a real disappointing moment for me.
I'll tell you, I don't know how many YouTube channels you guys follow, but there's one called How to Be a Great GM. And there's someone named Guy on there, and they wrote a book. I have it behind me. It's a complete guide to naval battles. It is a fantastic resource to kind of add some new rules and some optional stuff. And it's all about, various sea creatures. There's different races. There's different ship combat rules and all that. Because one of the things that drove me nuts, and I never connected with somebody more, is when we were talking, and he's like, "Oh yeah, and if your boat, if you just choose to stop moving, you stop dead in the water." It's like, exactly. That's not how inertia works. That's not how. There's little things like that that just sometimes you miss the mark, I guess, when you're creating something.
There is one more thing I wanted to ask on this subject.
Sure.
As far as the laying down the foundations of creating an RPG, do you think it's easier to start with the dice system or creating the rules of the system first?
I think before you even think about math or any stats or anything, you need to know what you're trying to accomplish and how you want to go about doing that. So one of the things that we said we wanted to do is we wanted to give players more options. We wanted to make the world feel more like a world. And part of that is there's a big divide between, like, okay, if you're thinking about D&D, combat and everything else. So when you're in combat, it's a chess game. When you're outside of combat, there are completely different rules for how spells work, for how, we found it overly confusing that every spell wielding class uses spells in a different way, like the way they, it's just unnecessarily confusing to try and make them different. So I think it's easy to get wrapped up in, oh, do we want to use a D20 system? Do we want to roll multiple D6s? But first figure out what you're trying to accomplish. And I think the dice system kind of falls in a little easier. If you know, oh, I want combat to be fast and I want it to be this, this, and this, then you probably don't want to use standard AC. You want to use a little something different. So I think personally being very, very clear, and that's probably going to take several meetings about what you want to try and get done before you even get started on that stuff. I think it's like writing a movie or something, right? Like if you want to write a script, you don't start with like, well, what are we going to do on scene 9? It's like, the hell we talk? What story are we telling first? Let's try to figure that out, and then we'll figure out the big action set pieces.
Fast and Furious 23.
Oh my god, I love the Fast and the Furious. Oh, that was the biggest crime of 2020. We were robbed of a new Fast and the Furious movie, and that was the worst thing to happen last year.
Maybe that's what they stole.
Maybe that. Oh my god, they're geniuses. They're masterminds.
Never thought of that. So we brought you on Insight, and beforehand, when we were talking last time, you said that you were thinking about doing a show similar to this. And I'm fairly sure that you've kind of dipped your toe a little bit into a similar type of setting as this.
I've definitely tried it. One of my big failings is I can be forgetful when it comes to getting back to people. It'll be a thing where I'll have a post-it somewhere. It's like, yeah, I'm going to get back to, okay. And then I completely stiff somebody and I feel like garbage. But recently we call them the DNR Knights. They're a bunch of interns, but we don't like the term interns. So we gave them a cooler name, and they've been helping us immensely. Austin on there has been reaching out to people, has been, trying to set stuff up. And I got to play a game with the people over at the Darkmoor podcasts. And every once in a while I'll do an interview, I'll talk to somebody, and that's been working out so far. How regular is your schedule? How often?
We do Insight on the 15th of every single month.
Yep.
Okay.
And only doing it once a month gives us the flexibility of, like, you couldn't record the previous month, and so
Right.
I had enough time to find another person to fill in that gap. I actually interviewed Daniel, and he was like, I didn't know what was happening because this is his show. So
Right. I had delusions of trying to do a weekly show like this. It didn't work. It fell flat on its face as soon as I tried, just because it's tough to get people to schedule, man. It can be a nightmare because, I mean, people have jobs and kids and significant others, and
just doing a regular show can be a nightmare.
Oh, yeah.
We don't do live stuff because I have kids. Another co-host has a kid, and then the third co-host has like 9 kids.
Mhm.
So trying to get everybody together is very difficult. So instead,
Yeah.
we do 1 month, we bang out 3 sessions, and then I get together online for Barovia a little bit later on. And
Okay.
that's so far has worked out very well because we don't have to time crunch. Anytime between now and whenever we have like the specific, I have to get this out now, we can
Mhm.
find a date for us getting together. And I feel like that's really taken the pressure off of, I want to say like last story arc, where we had one person who was kind of a little wibbly wobbly on scheduling.
Mhm.
And we replaced that person with a new person who's like, we're here and we're ready to get this done. And now I don't have to worry about, we have to get this out today. I can edit throughout the week and we're good to go.
we've definitely been there. Obviously, it's been 9 years. That's going to happen. So sometimes we live a little hand to mouth with the session. It's like, well, we're recording on Saturday. I guess I'll edit all day Sunday and post it that night. So that happens every once in a while, but usually the cast is just super accommodating. They always try to work with each other. I mean, stuff does happen. Kids get sick, you get called into work, but having 4 groups in the main feed it has its benefits. And that's one. It's like, sometimes it's like, hey, can we just get, I know you guys just played, do you want to do another? Let's get in there. And we could usually find a team to make it work.
Another thing that's also helped with the time crunch is I kind of limited our episodes to about an hour 15 for editing room. So once we get done with one episode, we're still fresh. So we just bang out 2 more. And because the longer form episodes, people just start fading in and out of the paying attention and stuff. So keeping it like, here's an episode, we're doing it, boom, here we go, it's out. Let's try another one. Are you guys still good to go? And that's kind of kept everybody on track and it's been a lot easier on me as the editor, and I'm sure.
Oh,
it's
I
helped
imagine.
you
Yeah.
as the DM.
Dude, I imagine that's once a year we do live shows, and it's called Theriathon. It's every April. It's on our anniversary, and we try to get every single group to play back to back to back. So it's just I DM a session. It's like 2 or 3 hours. It's usually 3 hours. We take a quick break. I jam a cookie in my mouth or something, and it's like, okay, next session, go. And it goes on for 12 hours like that. And it is nerve wracking, and I love it. The only thing that tops it is playing in front of people, which I mean every year except last year we get to do a Dragon Con, but man, it is super fun to have like live feedback in the chat and stuff. It's just if you make a mistake, it's all out there. Like you don't get a chance to edit it.
I heard Dragon Con's a really good time.
Oh, it's so amazing. I didn't realize how big a part of my year that was until it wasn't there anymore. Like getting to see listeners and shake their hands and stuff like that. Like shaking someone's hand feels so foreign now. When's the last time you shook someone's hand?
I've dabbed it up a lot.
Yeah. Okay.
That's dabs.
Yep. I've seen the elbow move.
Elbow moves,
Yeah,
headbutts.
Yeah. I've seen that.
Headbutts. Get out of my face. Jason, you remember what we do at the end of the show with our piece of insight to try to help players and DMs and so on and so forth become better at what we do. If you would like to take the helm, or you can wait and one of us can give one of our pieces of insights while you think about it, but that's up to you.
I think I went first last time, and I'd feel rude doing that again. So let's take turns.
Dan, you want to go, or you want me to take the helm?
I'll go ahead and go. I'm going to take one off of Jason's book here. And my piece of insight is get the setting first before you make the scenes. Get the idea you want going forward before even making the guts of your story, right? So if you're a GM, that means having the continent built, the foundation made, and then filling in with towns and cities so that you don't end up getting not the greatest sounding names for towns like Crosstown or Plainston or
Beachton.
Yeah, Beachton.
Beachhead? Are you kidding me? Dan, this is your campaign. You came up with Beachton.
Had a different name, but I forgot it.
Yeah.
But that's
it
my
was Sandton before. That was the.
No, it was like Hemlock.
It was
way off base.
Oh,
the naming convention.
I can give you a couple more minutes to think if you would like, or.
Oh, dude, I have one. I just didn't want to I just didn't want to be rude.
You want to be like the kickball player and bring us home?
Sure. Yeah.
So I will go next. I personally, we've touched on this before in the podcast. Backgrounds on characters make the story better, and don't be afraid to come up with a really cool and creative background. And as a GM or DM, don't be afraid to pull from that character's background, because you not only really pull, if you like, you get story ties that you can like have like little side quests on, and it will take that character and put them in like the front row seat, especially if you have a character who is a little bit sitting in the back. It brings them to the forefront of the game. And
definitely,
I really enjoy characters who have backgrounds, and I require it whenever I run the story.
I mean, it shows you're listening too. It shows that if you do that early on, if you just make little mentions, it's like, oh, well, I know that Alexandria had, lived here. Would she have a specific insight to that? Like, show them that you're listening, show them that you did your homework, so they'll be more engaged in your story. That's super easy. Yeah. I see a lot of this in DMing. Starting something is infinitely easier than keeping it going. If you watch a movie and all of a sudden you want to run a Mad Max session and that doesn't fit in your world, don't do that. Like, run something else. That's fine. Making your world consistent and giving it rules is the thing that makes it feel like an actual place. If every time the players sit down, you put some new, if you've told people that reincarnation is impossible, and then you start adding NPCs that have been reincarnated, and you break those rules, it's going to start to feel like there are no consequences, or that it's only going to change when you see something cool that you want. So why dedicate it to memory? Why I think sticking with the campaign shows your players that you have some kind of plan. I definitely think most people should have some sort of end game in mind so that they could do something else if they'd like to, but don't go to all the trouble of starting a new thing or creating a setting and then just dumping it 3 sessions in because you saw Blade last night and that's what you want to go do now.
Yeah, I really like that insight. That's great. Don't be afraid to put a period or a bow on it either. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm the last person that should be giving that advice. I've been running the same campaign for 9 years. Don't listen to me, but
Well, once again, we were super happy to have you, Jason. It's always a fun conversation and always a good show when you're on.
I really appreciate you guys having me. I'm sorry it took so long. Yeah, just stuff going on.
Yeah, you're a super busy person, and we hope for the best on all your future endeavors.
Oh no, I've been future endeavored. That's the. It sounds like. Oh no. I really appreciate it. Thank you, because statistically, not everything's gonna work. I guess.
Everybody, thank you for listening to Race Set Roll Insight. As always, I've been Daniel. Along with me is my co-host Craig and our guest Jason, and we'll catch you on the next one. See you later.
Bye.